Call the meeting to order at 6:30. Tasia, would you do roll call, please?
Yep, Bob Gunther.
Here.
Catherine Cranston. Here. Bruce Belargin.
Here.
Roxanne Kendall.
Here.
Katie Thurman.
Here.
Patty Jo Forsberg. Here. Lori Belargin.
Here. Our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Public comment. I did not receive any emails. Sarah, would you like to talk with us about the early college?
Sure. And this is just kind of more of a kind of informational, because I know you can't act on these until a little bit later. But as we had students go through the enrollment process at River Falls, some of the classes that they originally had submitted to be approved that were approved, those classes were full. And so as a result, River Falls works with our students to find new classes that they could potentially take instead of the courses that they have originally requested. And so this is basically just me asking you to approve those additional courses that students would like to take as part of their ECCP programming. They're students who submitted their applications the 1st of March, so they followed all the deadlines. But due to UWRF enrollment and classes filling up, these are the classes that they were actually able to get into. So they did have to submit new applications for the board to sign off on. And so when you guys are able to approve those, if we could get signatures and send them over, that's all they need if that's something you guys can approve.
So this will come back to the regular session?
Yeah, the 28th, I believe. Yeah. So the courses that are on there, the teal courses are the ones that the board has approved in prior semesters, and then everything that's white are new classes. Oh, that's it. Thanks. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about ECCP or anything like that?
Thank you. Well, I have a question
Sure.
that I don't want an answer to tonight.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
But in the past, I've noticed that there's a lot of classes that have to do with speech. And for this fall semester, there's 32 students taking classes. We used to have a speech teacher in Somerset, and I'm wondering who would be able to provide an answer to the cost effectiveness of the early college credit compared to if we had our own
Sure.
speech teacher again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something for in the future, perhaps?
Absolutely. And I know speech and intro to communication studies, those are two of the more popular classes that students opt to take. In terms of fall final enrollment, I have another tab on there without student names, so you can see what classes they're actually taking and when. But that's definitely a conversation that Shannon and I can have about the courses that students are requesting to take. And speech definitely is one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? That was really easy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Then item, Mark.
Construction.
Yes.
Yeah, we just had a POC meeting tonight from 4:30 to 5:15, and good news is we're about, I would say, 98% complete, if not more. We're gonna have some people around the buildings for the next 2-3 weeks doing the balancing and making sure the mechanicals are all running the way they should. It will not be intrusive. Again, you might have 2 or 3 people in a building. The elementary is knocked out right now. The high school and middle school are at the same stage right now. We'll have these people balancing. And there's some punch list items that they're going through, and you can see, they knocked some concrete out here, just things that were either damaged or weren't done right, so they go back and redo that. We'll have that probably the remainder of this week. Bob, you want to give a little update on the roundabout out there? They poured about the west side of all the curb and gutter.
Yep, so we had 2 rain delays. So schedule was to have pavement down this Thursday. However, that's not gonna happen with the scheduling with the concrete contractor and the paving contractor. So it delayed and shifted things about a week out. So that will be gravel when school starts, unfortunately. But it's just trying to get the subcontractors in. And the rain last Friday really hurt us, so we had to cancel that. Otherwise, we would have had a week to allow the concrete to cure up enough to pave, but we don't, so it's gonna shift things. And then
today, this morning, they didn't work today,
they work today.
or not this morning, no.
No, about 11
Maybe.
o'clock we were able to start, so and dry everything up.
You mentioned they'll have sidewalks,
Sidewalks will be completed this week,
So that'll-
and they'll be able to walk
Okay.
on those. So we really want to get that west side taken care of and buttoned up, and then just focus back on the east side, so it's not conflicting with the school traffic. But might be a good thing for people to use an alternate northern access road coming in here, just to avoid just dealing with contractor. We are planning on starting at 8:30, so what cars come through, there's not gonna be an issue with them dealing with heavy equipment moving around, so.
yeah, so maybe for that first week, first half of the week or whatever, we avoid the roundabout area. Cause I can see we could have them cycle in from the Meadows into that middle school loop and then back out that way, and then also open up Bruce Larson around the backside of the high school for that first week. But we'll talk about that at admin on Thursdays to see how
I
we.
think it's gonna be a preference, people don't mind. It's not gonna bother us. Bus traffic might be another thing, just for some of the radius turning is gonna be a little tight. So I'll talk to Dewey at the bus company and see, what accommodations he needs if they're gonna use.
They're gonna come in that way.
So we
Okay.
have it, so they can actually negotiate that right coming in here. But the apexes that are poured now, it's pushed away from the curb, so, but hopefully, like I said, we have all that stuff taken care of prior to, Tuesday of next week.
Bruce, do you have anything from our last meeting or so that you want to add?
No, I mean, just a reminder on that, we're not gonna have it done now, but it saved $140,000 to do it that way. So, I mean,
It's worth it.
for a couple days.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
cover that. And financially, we've gone through, I can't remember exactly how much of the construction contingency is left, but we are still sitting on about $1.6 million of referendum dollars, that, about $1.2 million in the construction, and about like 400 and some thousand in interest income off of that also. So, I think we had a strong $1.5 million left, and then we're getting some prices on this piece out here. Also, there's a couple projects we want to put off till next summer. If you noticed in the middle school, we should go ahead and replace the rest of the door frames and things like that weren't replaced this year as part of the initial. But we'll be working with Wold to put a list together of some things that we should do for next spring.
Would the carpet in some of those extra rooms be included in that?
Right, yeah, and again, we had about 5 rooms in the high school that we didn't do the flooring. They should be done, but we didn't want to add any more scope to it, because when you do that, it all of a sudden gives a reason to delay things and what have you. So it's just something that we're gonna earmark for next summer.
Mark, when you said we're getting pricing for this piece out here, did you mean like the parking lot for this building?
Right, we're just getting a price to see where we're at, if we wanna go ahead with that, again, see where we're at. Yeah. The other thing we are gonna go ahead with is putting these 2 offices in out here for Rod and Jody, just for confidentiality and what have you, on this side. Any questions about construction here that we have? Okay.
Reopening?
Oh, okay. So staff came back this week, met with the elementary staff this morning, and everyone's just so glad to be back. It's been almost 6 months since we've been face to face here, and a real good meeting over at the elementary school. And they had the least amount of work done over there. Basically, it was exterior, with the roof and what have you. So I emphasize, if you have a leak in your room, let me know. We need to know that. but the mechanicals were all done over there. There is air conditioning in the building now, so that, we didn't have that last week for the new staff. So that was a big difference there. But, we spent a lot of time going through some of the new protocols that we have. And I'll be meeting with the middle school and the high school tomorrow. And, last Thursday we got the word from the county, and it's more regional now. It's not just St. Croix County. They're trying to act regionally, a set of what they call recommendations. So we got orders from the governor, we've got guidelines from DHS, and we've got recommendations from the county/regional, which would be Pierce County, St. Croix County, not Dunn County, but Polk County, acting together. And as I said in my weekend letter, none of this will prohibit us from opening our buildings, but there's some things in there that if we don't pay attention to could close us down in a hurry. And that's what all the soups are a little upset with, is that none of us were they've been dealing with this for 6 months, and none of us were called in on the final document. And I think New Richmond is the one that I got an email from them today saying, here's how we're gonna handle it, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. But it has to deal with the exclusion piece of close contacts and symptomatic staff or kids. And I'll just throw out an example here. If Bob works in the school here and he's got 3 kids, Bob's a teacher, 3 kids, one of them has a runny nose and a headache, Bob and all 3 of his kids have to go home for 10 days, and they have to be tested. And it's what we're seeing is overkill, because that could shut us down in a hurry. What I just mentioned to Ryan here, one of the emails from one of the soups, they're working real close with their nursing staff on identifying baselines, because that's where you have to start with. If a student has allergies or hay fever or what have you, you can't say, hey, you gotta go home, you had COVID, and the whole family is home. So we have to be really careful on how we operate. And also with this whole not contact tracing, but the close contact piece, if our staff maintains in these classrooms this 5-foot, 6-foot distance, they're excluded from that whole close contact piece. If you're within that range for 15 minutes over a 24-hour period, you could be considered a close contact, and then you're out. But if they can say they can maintain that distance, if someone goes down in a classroom, we don't have to shut down the whole classroom. So we gotta do a little bit more work on this, but those are some of the things we're up against. There hasn't been any child in our county hospitalized from this. There's been cases, but no one's been hospitalized as of right now, as far as youth. There were some pretty pointed questions asked today. These meetings are getting tough because, again, when you get into the Hudson and the Richmond areas where they have a little bit higher level of, should I say, poverty, what have you, you start quarantining whole families over runny noses and headaches and what have you, you're devastating people. And so again, we're trying to look at all areas of this piece and use our head and use some common sense. And it's, Ryan's got a tough job. Right now he's the most important person in this district to keep us running. And he's doing a heck of a job interpreting all this. And Ryan, if you want to say anything about how we're moving so far.
So yeah, like Mark said, just these guidelines coming out, I understand that these kids need to stay safe, and that we really like to continue with the face-to-face, but again, from an epidemiological standpoint, it's not always plausible, because obviously we're going to be interacting quite a bit close within schools, so again, just keeping those social distancing aspects in place, as best as possible can ultimately help us in the long run. But overall, there's just a lot of guidelines, and we just kind of gotta figure out, how we are gonna go about those, with staff and students, coming in and out, so. As updates keep coming, I'll try to keep interpreting them as best as I can. There's a lot of different opinions, there's no right or wrong answers right now, we're just trying to figure everything out, to hopefully stay open as long as we can and keep everybody safe, so.
You just have to be prepared, we don't know which way this will go, and again, we're preparing for both ends of the spectrum, on this, and, I was very proud of the way people handled this last spring, our staff, we basically went from face-to-face to virtual in 3 to 5 days, and we learned some things from that, and we played out a lot of what-ifs in our administrative meetings and that, and, basically right now let's get her going and see what happens, but if we err on anything, we want to err on the side of being cautious, so we'll see how this plays out in our buildings and that, and again, there's people saying that we won't be open more in a couple of weeks, and some say, we're gonna be fine. So again, as Brian says, everyone's got their opinion on it, but the best way to mitigate this is, the face coverings, the physical distancing, washing hands and sanitizing, and we're, ramping up all those efforts. Any questions about our reopening? So far, all of our plans, staff are back in the buildings and they're setting up their classrooms. You saw a lot of furniture in the hallways and things. Those are things that people are taking out of their classroom. Everything was loaded off the trucks into their classroom. Now they're taking them out so they can create more physical distance in their classroom. Same with the elementary.
As far as the allergies goes, because fall allergies are a thing, are you just gonna ask parents if this is something that's typical of their student to get to that? Because, yeah, it would be a shame to quarantine a family if it's truly is allergies, but.
Yeah, that's what that baseline is, that, our healthcare workers in our buildings are gonna have to talk with parents and find out, is this, an existing condition? Are they being treated for this? Are they on medication for this? And again, it comes down to, we gotta use our heads and that, and, and we know that, the best thing, the most important thing here is if kids are sick, keep them home. I mean, that's one of the number one things that, we have to tell people, and I think we've made it pretty clear there. But again, establishing that baseline so we're, using our best judgment. That's why I say Ryan's got a tough job. He's got 3 healthcare workers that he's gonna have to work with and monitor, and he's gonna be scrambling. He's gonna be running around quite a bit. And again, if people are symptomatic, what have you, we've got to react with the guidelines we have and do what we need.
So Ryan, do you have any flexibility with following these guidelines? For example, if you have a child that it's established that they do have seasonal allergies?
Yeah, like Mark said, I would like to find a baseline for each student. Again, a lot of students have asthma, so if they come in with shortness of breath, obviously that's one of the 3 major symptoms that we're looking for to sending kids home. But you gotta assess the situation and treat each student individually. If it is asthma and they do have a plan, like Mark said, get treated for that, I wanna take a look at that first before I just make a decisive decision and say, yeah, you're going home, just because you have this symptom. Like we do in the healthcare, we always analyze first before we make a decision. We don't just jump right to conclusions. So I do have a little flexibility on that. So just assessing the situation first before I call up a parent and say, hey, come pick up your child. We suspect this. So I told my health aides today that to just, like I said, assess the child first to see what their baseline is. If we feel like it's something more, then obviously we will call the parents and tell them to come pick up their child. But at that point, like I said, case by case, it's gonna be different, so just using common sense, like Mark said, and establishing that baseline to see where that child fits.
Thank you.
One other piece on reopening. Trent, do you have an update on just the activities portion of reopening?
Yeah, I mean, cross-country and girls golf, cheer and dance have started a few weeks ago, and they're going. Girls golf has been competing in matches, several of them already. Cross-country's gearing up to run in their first race this Thursday at St. Croix Central, and we actually host our home meet on the 10th of September. And then our remaining sports, football, boys soccer, and volleyball start next week. I think the biggest news across the conference is limiting spectators at games. That's a conference-wide thing, and I think that's something you'll see statewide, to be quite honest. The consistent part within the conference is that everybody's limiting it to 4 tickets per participant for outdoor sports, boys soccer and football, and indoor sports is limited to 2 tickets per participant. So we put communication out to families late last week in the scoop, and also sent it out in a middle school update and a high school update. So we try to get as much information out as possible. So we're working through some logistics as a conference as to what that might look like. So that way we're not having to print tickets for 1 million games this fall. So we're trying to streamline that a little bit, so more info will come on that.
I saw it in the scoop, so it said that the tickets will be handed out through coaches to kids. So,
Yeah.
so parents don't come to school to get it,
Right.
it'll come through their coach to their kid. I thought the directions were really clear on the scoop.
And even today, we had further discussion as a league on how we can streamline that even more, so that it should be hopefully a smooth process. So again, at the end of the day, is it the most ideal thing? No, but the main thing that we can't lose sight of is that our kids have the opportunity to participate and compete, and that's why we're here, is for the kids, so.
And the live streaming, it mentioned that the Middle Border Conference is gonna make a point of trying to live stream most
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So, great.
Did you have anything else, Mark?
No, I'm done.
Did anybody have any further questions? All right. The next item, 7, staffing.
Yeah, that's, as I put on that note this weekend, that's just to pick up some pieces around the high school office and the media center where we're short because of taking Brandon Berry out of there. Shannon, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but it's basically help around the office and some help with Trent also.
Yeah, and I would say the library aid piece kind of came up a little bit unexpectedly. Brandon, now being a district-wide employee, is going to be housed kind of out of each building and not necessarily housed in his normal spot in the library, which is where I thought he was going to be. Makes sense, district-wide, he's now serving all buildings, so that leaves a bigger hole in the library in terms of supervision than I had anticipated. I think you guys did a tour before this, and that's a really large space and is going to be probably one of the most utilized flex spaces that we have. We have Pat Everson in the library already, and she's going to be kind of in that secure media center where all the books are, and kind of taking care of that piece, which leaves, you know, obviously a really large area where there's going to be quite a few kids, most mods. So just trying to make sure we've got our bases covered of making sure we have enough supervision in that space. So that was kind of where that piece came from.
So Shannon, does that mean that this person is going to be located in that library open area?
So that would be my ideal, and there's already a workspace there. Maybe you saw that as well, where when it was designed, that's where Brandon was going to be. So there's a space there, and I would envision this person working out of that space. That would make the most sense to me.
And Mark, I believe you mentioned at one time, I don't see it attached here, but didn't you mention that this is going to be a 1-year position?
That's what I'd recommend. We evaluate it each year.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions about this?
Just kind of the next one, did Dave ever come up with our updated budget to actual for the year with all the added positions?
Well, you can ask him when he comes in here.
Because you're referring, this one would be on that.
We're adding another
Yeah.
$15,000.
Which is next, does Dave know
Right,
that?
yeah. Yeah, he's probably watching it right now and walking over.
The 20 hours per week or as needed, that means either sometimes less or even more if necessary, or?
Yeah, that's why I put that in there because, you know, again, Trent's gonna need some help at times, you know, with what he needs there, and, you know, the understanding is that it's a half-time position right now, but time sheeted at anything over that.
So this would be like a 0.8, like we commonly say is a 0.8 assignment.
No, it's a 0.5, but,
Or
you know, I think,
0.5.
you know,
I said
budgeting wise,
half-time, so I
a
wasn't
full-time
sure.
support staff is around 24,000.
Okay.
And they'll timesheet anything over 0.5?
Right. Mhm.
Well, I'm glad you explained that about it being a matter of physical distance, because I wasn't understanding why we'd have another, we'd get another new position or 0.5 if we're looking at not having people potentially working. So it would be posted as a 0.5, and if somebody else who's already working a 0.5 position wanted it, could they take it? Could they post for it?
They'd
Or-
have to interview for it.
Well, so my question is, because then that would make them a 1.0, which would probably mess with the
Affect
budget
benefits.
potentially.
Plus, I think where they're working is part of the issue, their workspace, because we have to have an adult in that workspace.
Yeah.
Do
If we
anybody
can-
else have any questions on this position? So this will come back to the regular session in September also for approval?
Well, unless you want to approve it now so we can get it posted and taken care of.
Well, it's not on the agenda as an action item. Can you post and start looking
Oh,
before
definitely.
we approve?
Yeah, and we've been doing that with some positions just because of the urgency of
Okay,
where we're at right now, so.
so it'll come back at the regular session?
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions or?
I like that.
All right, item 8 is the Q4 budget.
Hello. There's a little delay in that feed.
Oh, okay.
Every
So
meeting.
if you all want to pull it up, we can just go through it together. So this is the last quarterly report for last year. As I say in the introduction, the numbers are pretty good. The audit isn't finalized yet. There's a couple things I would anticipate revenue and expenditure to increase slightly before it's completely done, but nothing of any significant note. You can see the discussion of the timeline. We're going to talk a little bit more about it at the budget hearing on the 14th, where it's again, still unaudited, but it's a comparison for the year prior and for the year that we're in now during that meeting. So all these numbers exclude transfers to another fund. You can see the summary sorted by function. That's the report that you get every month. You can see the areas that are close to budget and those that are under. Overall, if you read through this report, you have seen that we are under budget for the year. Probably the biggest area would be business administration, and within that, buildings and grounds, transportation, a lot of the services and utilities and service work. Because of the shutdown and the shortened year for construction, both kind of combined to really decrease those costs for the year, which for our situation, it is a good thing right now. Purchase and instructional services, you can see that at 104%. Open enrollment, tuitions were a bit higher than expected. Is the main driver for that increase, and then you can see the notes for the table underneath the table, just a couple more points to highlight. On the following page, you can see the two pie charts. Usually these look very similar at the end of the year. Again, because of our unique situation, you can see kind of the areas that were affected the most by our odd year this year. And you know, if you look just at the percentages, it's not a huge impact, but you can see, again, business administration wasn't as much as we expected. Regular curriculum kind of made up the pie a little bit as far as the amount, the total amount expended goes, but again, the overall pie was smaller than expected. On the following page, you see the summary, just instruction, support services, and non-program transactions. The chart, and then the expense ratio, again, which is very similar information to the two pie charts that we looked at on the previous page. On the next page, we see a sort by object. You see the far right column is the fiscal year-to-date percentage. So again, salaries and benefits, we're closer to being on budget than some of the purchase services. Non-capital objects are always a bit lower than budgeted, and other objects are always a bit higher. But again, you can kind of see where the expenditures were most under budget. In the closer examination, this chart of different programs and departments, we always grow this as we go through time. When we talk about different things at different meetings, I'll pop that area onto this chart just so we can kind of track it and see what's happening with it. The first one of note that we really talked about was snow removal a few years ago, and again, this year that was very low, much lower than expected. Electricity, gas, and oil for heat, both low. In fact, everything on here is under their budgeted percentage for this year. Sub wages, I would note as well. And then you see the IT department, they're pretty close to budget for the year. I have some notes for that table on the following page. And then a discussion of the HRA. We did change this budget because of the trend over the previous years. I reduced the utilization percentage, the amount that we expected to pay for the year. It started out, first started at 60%, we reduced it to 45 for this year, for last year. We reduced it to 40, so that means we budgeted less. And you can see in the second chart of the two, so far it's been getting closer and closer actual to budget over the last few years. The blue line being the budget, and that, again, getting smaller this year. We will continue at 40% for 2021 as well. On the next page, you see special ed. Pretty similar to the overall percentage of expenditure in the general fund as well. On the next page, you see revenues. And revenues were close to budget, closer than expenditures. Because again, there weren't a lot of drivers that could change those revenues like they can for the expenditures that happen during the year. Cash flow timing. Both of these charts include fund transfers, so the transfer from 10 to 27. And they also include revenues that are receivable, so the final tax payment for the year was received mid-August, but it was included here as received in June. And you can see the expenditure by month and then the cumulative over time. They're very similar to most years, actually. It's just the ending up spot on the bottom chart. Tiny difference between those two is as we've discussed, less expenditure than expected. And so the summary, expenditures under budget, revenue's a little bit under budget, but the net position, I think we're gonna end up about 635 to 650 fund balance, adding to fund balance for 2019, 2020.
And what percentage is that?
Well, the expenditures in the general fund were about 4% under. The fund balance percentage, if we end up there, will be about 23. And we aim for 15 to 25.
And that's per board policy, correct?
Yes.
So 23 is a nice shot.
Good number. We could increase that, we could change that policy.
I'm good with 23.
What's the other non-program transactions that was 243% over budget?
Well, what page is that?
It was a big percent, but a small.
It's a
amount of
small
money.
dollar amount, but it was just such a big percent.
Yeah, you'll see
Page
that
2.
if we have, you know, if it's a few $1,000 budget and then it's, you know, $10,000 expenditure, you get a huge percentage.
Yeah.
What falls under that category, just out of curiosity?
Oh, those are, some odds and ends. I think there's, some reimbursement for some Title IV stuff. There's, did I know that actually? Somewhere. I'll have to email you that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's
It's such a,
490,000 is where we put odds and ends if we have a, oh, I know, it was a tax charge back to the village was the biggest portion of that,
yeah,
where we have to give tax back.
okay. No, I don't need an email from you. I was just curious what falls in that category.
Sure.
Did anybody else have any questions or comments?
Hey Dave, have you come up with our increase for this year? So we can kind of weigh it out with our.
2021?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's built into the, so I sent the budget on Friday, the paper for publication this week for our budget hearing.
Okay.
And so it's all built into that. And so we'll talk about that even more, but I did hear the meeting, and so a lot of we have a long list of positions that we replaced for this year, and so that turnover, knowing that I think there's still a couple out there that we have to finalize for dollar amounts for this year, but that's saving us quite a lot of money. The attrition of staff, whether through resignation or retirement. And so all the new positions that we're adding so far, so the healthcare providers, the full-time subs, I did cost the office aide, it's around $200,000, 220.
That's how much we're adding?
Yeah, but the attrition is negative about 230. So it's still a net reduction overall right now
For staffing.
for staff.
So you're saying with all the subs that we added in the health, all the positions were at a net negative?
Where we're standing at right now, yeah.
No, it's only a 10K difference, right?
Right, it's a wash.
Well,
There's still.
but I mean, I've been expecting $400,000.
But we'll be
Well,
filling
we
those.
we have other expenditures that are significant.
That's just staffing.
That's just staff.
Okay, where's the number then?
Ooh, what number?
Like, if our budget is 18.1 million, are we, as you're projecting 18.5 million, or are we?
Oh, this year?
Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head, though I worked on it all week last week. It's, it is increased, it's much closer to what the budget was for this year. I can't remember off the top of my head the number, but again, it'll be in the paper this week, and we'll talk about it quite a lot at the budget hearing,
On the 14th.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
In your mind, were there other COVID-related expenses that weren't necessarily staff? Because I'm thinking of masks and sanitizer and
We did
extra
buy
cleaning.
a lot of PPE, and it's, we got quite a lot, and it was around $20,000, I wanna say. You know, it's not, in the full scope of the budget, it's not a huge number just for PPE. There were some other costs, and that's something we're working on for reporting purposes, for the CARES Act funds. We have to say
Oh,
what we saved
good.
and what
When you do
were
that, that
additional
would be a good
expenditures.
report we'd like to see.
Yep.
Because even our janitorial or all that's gonna be up.
Janitorial is a big one. The tuitions for the online, the virtual education is a big one.
Oh, good, yeah, the ingenuity,
Yes.
good lord, yes.
So, yeah, staffing has turned out through the churn that we're kind of, you know, status quo as far as cost goes, but we do have a lot of other things going on.
Do you think that's maybe because seasoned staff, veteran staff is being replaced by younger staff? Yeah, that is, yeah, okay, I just wanted to say that to the virtual world, because, you know, laying off a veteran teacher and hiring a young teacher is gonna save us money and not just, you know.
Well, I think what happened was people resigned or retired. If you retire, you're generally at the top of the pay scale. Resignations can be for, you know, at any point on the pay scale, if you're going to another district or if you're, you know, what have you. You wanted to take a sabbatical, but you couldn't take one, you know. But generally speaking, it has worked out that way where it's been, the higher compensated individuals have been replaced with lower compensated individuals, just how it's worked out this
Okay.
year.
Well, at least we got part of your question answered then, right, Bruce?
Yeah,
Okay.
We're getting there.
Okay.
What about grants for PPE? Didn't we get a small
Uh-huh.
grant? And then will we
CARES.
possibly be getting more?
Yeah, we, the first part of that is 40,000, and we'll be planning to use it this year in 2021. There's also some governor funds, that was the second part of that, and we will possibly be getting some more, depending, again, the discussion we've been having about what's the Fed gonna do. If they provide additional money like they do with CARES, then presumably we would also get some additional help for all these things that we're spending money on. I did see today that the state revenue came in higher than expected, so that's a good bit of information for us. That's positive for the moment. But we are still waiting to hear what the Fed might do.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions?
Lori, just a comment here, and it has to do with what Catherine brought up here about ingenuity and the budget and the expense of that. It's a very expensive item for us, and just to get this out to the virtual world here too, that we have a 14-day window whether to back out of that or what have you. I'm not saying altogether, I'm saying with individual students. So we're saying to parents, and you know, we've got about 115 kids that are going into this, that if you're not showing progress within the first 10 days, because this is a very regimented, this isn't like our online we did last year. If they're not showing progress within the first 10 days, they will be out of that program and they'll be back, you know, face to face. But again, I just want to make that clear that, again, it's a very regimented program. It's, you know, some people have the expectation it's going to be like what we did last spring, and it is not like that, so.
So is Brandon Berry the person, our law?
Right,
our
yeah,
business
Brandon
owner?
is, yeah, I just talked to Trish today about this, and that, we wanted to just get that out there, that, again, you know, this is a very expensive program, and it's not like it was last spring.
Well, they're having an open house at the elementary school, and I'm sure they'll make that very clear.
Yeah,
That's
they will,
September
they
10th.
will, but I just want to say it here so people got that it's one of the ways we can contain costs.
Well, didn't we do for virtual, if you didn't pass the class, you would have had to pay for it? Can we do anything like that? Can we write it in somehow, or when people sign up for it, if they don't?
It's not a
pass
class,
Public
though.
education.
the course, then they get stuck with the bill?
I don't,
Good luck,
I don't know if we can do that.
I thought we did it for virtual class,
That was
so.
for a
Well,
different program.
Yeah.
It's not quite apples to apples in terms of, what you're describing versus some leeway that we've had with some other courses we ran using other programs.
Thank you.
That's the short version.
There was somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. It's been made explicit though in the emails from Brandon, what the expectation is. There isn't any mincing words there. And from the parents I know that are doing it, myself included, we're not expecting what was last spring. We're expecting to have to do the
Regular.
work too.
Well,
Yeah,
and that's why we
so,
Good
did
to
it.
know.
That's why
Yeah.
we did it, right?
exactly.
So we didn't have that
Yeah.
loss.
Dave, did you want to add something? Did you want to add something? I thought I heard you start to speak. No? So Brandon Berry's the one who's going to be making that decision about whether adequate progress is being made, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe between Brandon and curriculum, Trish.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions?
If I may, I was just gonna ask you, Dave, do you have the cost to the district for PPE and additional janitorial services broken down on a monthly basis? How much it costs the district every month?
Janitorial we will, but not PPE, because we've, that was something where we were preparing for the unknown. And so we ordered a lot, we didn't know if we get it or not, so we ordered a lot, and right now we're not ordering.
Okay.
At least masks, for instance, but some of the other supplies, whether it's hand sanitizer or what have you, again, some of them were big orders.
Okay.
So we're kind of status quo for a while,
Yep.
seeing how that goes. So it's not really a per month thing with PPE.
So in case the school district is closed down and we go virtual, that would be, since the janitorial services are by and large the vast majority of that cost, that's a significant saving for the district.
It would be, just like last year when we saved some money on
Did anybody else have any questions?
No.
All right, thank you, Dave. The next item on the agenda is policies. And the first one, these are all first readings tonight, so they'll be coming back to the regular meeting for approval. The first one has to do with Title IX. And it was rather long, but there was not a lot that needed information. If you'd like to follow along though, the policy committee did meet on it and we can tell you our recommendations. The first one is on page 2. At the top, there's some definitions, and if you look at item B, do you want me to stop until people get there, or are you ready?
Good.
So I spoke with Chris, our Neola person today, because when the policy committee got together, we were concerned by the definition there. We have another school board policy, 0145. I asked Chris if we could use the definition in that policy to replace this, and he said yes. So we will get that wording to Tasia and have her print it up so you guys can see it before we vote on it at the regular session.
It makes sense to have the same. Definition.
From one policy to the next. Then the next part, Chris already filled in part of it. It has to do with the names of our Title IX coordinators, which match some of our other policies, being Abby and Trent. That was on page 4.
You're almost done.
And then, let me see.
Was there anything else?
Yeah, Abby's not here, but Trent, maybe you can help we had some questions for the coordinators, because there's some things in this policy, some standards that need to be met, and we just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of them and that the district is doing them. One of them had to do with
Publishing, notification.
does the district have a template? This is on page 7, in the timeline portion, in paragraph 3. They talk about the district having a template notice form available that can be quickly completed with the requisite information after receipt of a formal complaint. Do we have one of those? If you could just check just to make sure, that would be great. Thank you. Another thing it says, this was back on page 5, is they use the term prominently display the Title IX coordinator's contact information and this policy on the district's website and in each handbook. And we just approved the handbooks, and I know it was in there. And I guess I don't know what they mean by prominently display. I know that we have that information on our website. I hope that is prominently enough. On page 5, it also says that it's recommended that the Title IX coordinators be trained on evaluation of anonymous reports. So we want to make sure that Abby and Trent have that training. And on page 6, it says that the board is considered to have actual knowledge of sexual harassment or allegations of sexual harassment. If any board employee has such knowledge. So that means every time a complaint is filed, the board needs to be notified.
I'm not really sure.
No,
Yeah,
we talked about this one.
yeah, or if we can strike it, because it should follow our other policies. I feel like,
Well, basically, to me, it's saying that you're mandated reporters also.
it's kind of like that, but it's worded, I think we could probably just cross it.
I think we have to be noticed, I think we have to report,
What's that?
what does it say?
I mean, if there's a complaint, is that?
The board is considered to have actual knowledge if any board employee has such knowledge. So if any board employee, if any employee in the district has knowledge of it, the board is considered to have knowledge of it as well.
And page 5?
It's on page 6,
6.
Yeah, it's about the 4th paragraph.
and it starts, the paragraph starts with the word because. And because the board must take specific actions, I think that's why it's saying that the board needs to be notified.
I think,
I interpret that as we're mandated reporters, and if we hear about it, we better report it.
well, we don't have to take specific action. Board employees do.
Right.
What they're referring to as board employees do. So I wanna restructure that.
Well,
sentence.
yeah, because in a lot of cases, you have to stand as judge and jury on something like this if it comes to you.
At the tail end.
And so has to be some separation there, but as
Just
reporters.
notified that it's happened.
Pardon?
Just notified
Right,
that it's.
right. So, if we're investigating a piece, that's typically where I go to the board chair and say,
Okay.
Here's what's happening.
Then in that same paragraph, it talks about how soon a board employee has to notify the Title IX coordinator. And Neola, was suggesting within 2 days. But I talked with, if you read the red that's crossed out, they kind of explain their reasoning there. And the state statute that this refers to, 48.981, says immediately. So the policy committee is recommending that we strike within 2 days and substitute, keep the word immediately, so it follows state law. And then on page 10, about the 4th paragraph, where it says in green the 3 days, if you look at the drafting note, it's supposed to be 1 day. It's 3 day if you have if the board permits hearings, but we don't do that. So if it's just a interview, it's supposed to be 1 day. So that will need to be fixed. And I believe that, and then on page 13, within this policy, it refers to 11 other policies. And if you look on page 13 of it, there are 2 policies that it mentions that we don't currently have. And in talking with Chris today, he recommended that we maybe should have those policies. So he dropped them into our drafts file. And the one that's crossed out, 5610.01, we actually do have that policy. So we need to uncross it and keep it in there. I think that's all I have. Katie, Patty, Joe, do you have anything? Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
Nope.
Thank you.
So Tasia, I'll send you some notes on this so
Okay.
that we can get this policy with all the recommendations out to the rest of the board members so that you can review it before we approve it at our regular session. Then the next policies all relate to health, and I'm so glad that Ryan and Dr. Ramsey are here tonight so that you can give us your recommendations. Some of these policies we're just required to review annually. And when I talked with Chris today, he said that there's a line item. You know how all our policies have when they were enacted and when they were revised? There's also the option below those 2 where you can put reviewed date. And so we can document every year that we've reviewed them.
Okay.
So of those health policies, there was only one, I think it was 5330, that's actually being revised. But if you have recommendations to the board for things in any of these policies that you'd recommend revising, we'd like to hear from you.
Do we just wanna go through 5330?
Or do you want them to email you with
Well, was there
53.
anything with 5310 was one that we did not have to make any revisions on. Was there anything in 5310 that you saw, Ryan or Lisa?
We only reviewed 5330 and the conversations concerning 5330.
Okay, so you were good with the rest of them?
I didn't look at them in depth, no.
Okay. All right, so then 5330, that's the one that has some green on it. What are your recommendations?
But wait, our committee said we want other people weighing in. So.
Well, since they haven't had a chance to really review them, do you guys want time and then you can
No, they
have
have
reviewed
did.
them? Oh,
Okay,
okay.
let's,
Yep.
anytime.
Yeah, the revisions, especially those noted in green, make perfect sense, and frankly, I don't see any need for the CBD oils use in school, so I would opt for that.
That's what we thought too.
No CBD products.
Option 2.
So if we check the first option there, students are prohibited from possessing, then we really don't need to do anything with the next option 1 and option 2, but
Yeah, but I mean, do we really, we wanna keep students from having ibuprofen at school?
do we?
I mean, I'm just thinking, do we really want the students this year, especially this year, going to the office every time they need a ibuprofen or a Tylenol or something? I mean, as long as they're not distributing it between
Yeah,
each other. I mean, I know I had ibuprofen in my car all the time.
we had that discussion also, and on the one hand, well, go ahead, Patty Jo.
My thing was the same, like, I have a bottle of ibuprofen on me, I know
Right.
Eric has a bottle of, I mean, we just carry it. But then as Katie said, what if they have the signs and symptoms of COVID, and they're utilizing it because they're actually sick? And they're trying to make it, so which one is it, are they sore for, have a headache, or?
No, it was really, does the district wanna know if somebody's?
People are sick.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we were going with it.
And it always puts teachers, staff in the position of asking a student, what are you taking? And then trying to verify nondescript tablet, liquid. That's difficult in a high school setting.
Well, the way this policy's written also is every kid that would have their own bottle would have to bring it and have it labeled in the office. And, I mean, those new offices are nice and big, but
We talked about this a year or two ago, and we had talked about getting rid of this sentence so that each child, you didn't have 400 bottles of Tylenol
Right.
in every health.
I don't think that's the practice.
Can I ask Chuck and Shannon this, if you guys have any concerns, or, I mean, has this come up in the past where, hey, we gotta get a handle on some of this stuff, because it's not an Advil, it's, metformin, it's an Advil bottle. I think this is what we're maybe asking, or at least I'm asking. Is it?
I would say I land smack in the middle, right? Because I'm sure there's lots of kids that have Advil with them throughout the day, you bet, and is it a concern? No. Have we run into issues just as, Dr. Ramsey described, we find a pill bottle and it kind of ends up doing this? Yeah. So I would be comfortable either way. If the policy says you can't have it on you, then we'll proceed as we kind of have been, and if we come across it and we find it, then we address it and we navigate it. If it's gonna be kind of moved the other way, truly, I feel smack in the middle.
Well, I think if a kid's gonna use something, they're gonna either put it in their, they'll find a way to have it. They don't need an ibuprofen bottle to put it in there.
Yeah.
They'll hide it some way.
Correct.
I don't know,
But I don't think we're currently doing this. What currently happens? Because we don't have,
If a kid needs ibuprofen or Tylenol, they
Yeah.
come to the healthcare office, they sign in, they get their pills, it gets marked in Infinite Campus, so we know exactly what the
But-
dosage is.
in their own bottle?
No,
it's
no,
not.
we got rid of that part because of the
Yes.
storage issue.
That's what I
Currently,
was,
we stock the ibuprofen, we stock the Tylenol, the kids come to the healthcare office, and then it all gets marked and documented.
and that's kinda nice too.
Absolutely it is.
So we always document the parental consent, it's not that
Right.
they automatically get it.
Yeah.
It's parental consent at the beginning of the year, you check their file, and they get stock ibuprofen or Tylenol at the doses recommended for their weights too, not necessarily what the child brings in. And that's addressed in your policies as well.
Yeah.
And I've run into that at the high school where they want 4 Advil at once. And they may do that at home with mom and dad, but that's not the recommended dose on a true prescription, not an over-the-counter bottle that we stock, so.
So we have in here only those non-prescription drugs that are provided by the parent or guardian in the original manufacturer's package, which lists the ingredients and dosage in a legible format may be administered. That's not really what we do.
We wanna take that out, correct?
If we're going to be stocking it, I think we have to. take it
Yes,
out.
and I know that we talked about this before, so
Yeah.
I don't know why this sentence is still in here.
Yeah,
But we can take it out.
Well, you know, from very practical experience in the nurse's office, kids bring in other over-the-counter medications. Cough drops are a huge one. And those we don't stock for kids.
true. So,
And those are all the time kind of medications. But I've, again, from personal experience, mom and dad put it in a Ziploc and it's a little round disc. It's not in the packaging, and I think if we're going to adhere to that, we have to make parents send cough drops, cough syrup in the bottle, in the packaging that it comes in, so we can document how many we give out.
so can we try and find some language that will encompass all that and then bring it to the next reading? Does that seem reasonable? I don't know what it is yet, but we'll, email.
Yeah, and Brian and I can talk about it too. If my memory serves me correct, we have different doses of Tylenol and preparations, chewable for the little kids. We have different stock bottle preparations for the middle school and high school, and we do Tums. So we have Tylenol, ibuprofen, and Tums. But we can, I mean, there's 3, we can list those separately in the policy, and then leave the other
All the
phrase
others.
as is for the cough drops and then sundries that come in.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then what about the essential oils on the last page?
I see no utility for those in a school setting.
So we would,
That was our
That was
consensus
our thought
also.
too.
Yeah, I prefer not, if we could, yeah.
so we would check option
Give me a
2,
roll.
all students and staff are prohibited.
Correct.
Got it. Did anybody else have any
Oh,
questions?
that's about
No, we can't.
That's a middle school thing.
We have a vestibule designated for Axe body. It works very well. That's not a joke. They have a designated area where they can apply.
Extra ventilation.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Are there any other questions or concerns about 5330? 5335, it's talking about the EpiPen. I don't think, I think that one's not up for revision. And the same with 5340, student accidents, illness, concussion. Uh, 5341, emergency medical authorization. And then, I'm gonna skip to 80, perhaps you could call Trevor?
Yep.
8453 is the last one that was just for review. And then 8450 was the one where we talked about at our last meeting, and the consensus was to get some legal advice. Policy 8450 is the control of casual contact communicable diseases, so COVID-19 would fall under this policy.
This is Trevor.
Hi Trevor, it's Tasia.
Hey, Tasia.
Hi, we've got you on the speakerphone here with the board.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. So we have policy 8450 in front of us. How would you like to proceed?
So let's see. I have pulled up the one that you're looking at, and this doesn't have. Oh wait.
It's 8453.
8450. This does not have any of the draft provisions in it.
No.
Okay. So I guess the question that was put to me on 8450 is, does this apply to COVID-19 and kind of what does it mean for COVID-19? What does it mean for this year? And also there's a discussion about protocols established by the county health department and what does that mean? So as I read this policy, I do think that it is somewhat vague. It is not clear to me that it applies to COVID-19. My guess is that it probably would apply to COVID-19 because it's talking about casual contact communicable diseases, and everything we know about COVID-19 is that it can be spread through casual contact. So kind of the first thought is, what the board would ultimately like to see with this policy, and if we want to make it very clear that this policy does apply to COVID-19, it would be adding that as one of the defined illnesses in that second paragraph. And then also the other thing that I would suggest clarifying if we're going to make some revisions is to that final paragraph. The third paragraph basically says that the board is going to follow all state statutes and health department regs, which pertain to immunization and other means for controlling the communicable disease spread, which we're going to do anyway, so that's really not a problem. The only question was really that last paragraph, what is meant where it talks about protocols, county health department. As I read this, I think what that means is that is referring to the other sentence in that paragraph that talks about what happens when a student exhibits symptoms, and the principal then isolating the student and what those protocols actually are. And I think that, as you've probably heard, the county health departments have put out some new guidance recently, and I think what we'd like to do here, if we want to clarify what we mean there, is we can say that essentially it is about the isolation of persons exhibiting symptoms, just to make that crystal clear, so that there isn't a question where someone says, well, wait a minute, the county has changed these suggested best practices under policy 8450, you have to follow them. If we clarify this, well, we're clearly saying that we're only talking about the protocols or policies that are established regarding the isolation of students in the building and contacting parents and guardians. So this was kind of put to me as a question of how can and should we clarify this? And those were the kind of the issues that came up for me as I was looking at it. But I guess I'd open the floor to the board to if there are any questions or other potential concerns as you read this policy.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
So, sorry. So Trevor, this is Katie, sorry. Part of my confusion was what do we do with conflicting regulations or protocols or whatever language they're using. So I think what you're saying is, and also what you were just saying, now I'm confused by why we would take the county health department's guidance on isolation of students rather than the public health department or somebody else.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that this was written for a different situation. This was really written with an eye towards, if there is a potential county outbreak of measles or whooping cough. In a normal situation, unlike the upside down world we're in right now, that might happen at a county level. And a county would say, if we wouldn't have the state guidance from paragraph 3, we would be talking about in paragraph 4, what that really means is when there's a whooping cough outbreak in the county is going to tell you what to do with a student who shows up at school with that outbreak. We are way beyond that here, because we're actually talking about, state level guidance for just simply holding school altogether. So it really doesn't fit that well. And truly, when you read it, it's talking about protocols established by the county health department shall be followed. And what protocols is that talking about? Well, it's only talking about the protocols regarding isolation of students in the building when they exhibit symptoms of a communicable disease. So if we want to make this clear, and if we want this policy to apply to COVID-19, I 100% agree with you that it would be conflicting for us to say in paragraph 3 that we're going to follow the state guidance, and then in paragraph 4 that we're also going to follow the county guidance. So I think that is another area that clarification would be very helpful.
Yeah, or would it be better to have a separate one for the COVID? Just because there is so much conflicting guidance that you're getting. Mark wants to speak, I think.
Trevor, I know you're working with the other districts around us also, and I'm sure you've been asked all these questions. Again, we've got a mask mandate by the governor, we've got guidance by DHS, and now we've got recommendations from county health of what's now considered regional health from Pierce County, St. Croix County, and Polk, thank you.
You live
Polk
there.
County. And, as superintendents, we're just, we're up in the air on, what's mandated, what we have to follow. County health, we got very specific with them today as far as where's the enforcement on this? Are you mandating and ordering people that if they have symptoms, they have to go home? Or are these recommendations, which they are recommendations, but again, we want to run a wide spectrum of beliefs in these, even amongst the superintendents, on how do we apply these guidance and recommendations in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah, and I think that that's why this policy just doesn't quite seem to fit the moment. And you don't necessarily need to adopt a board policy on exactly what you're going to do for this school year, because things are changing, because things are a bit fluid. As far as we're going to follow all county county suggestions, that type of thing. That really isn't what this policy is there for, but it certainly could be. If you wanted to have that clear somewhere, would be what level of flexibility do we lose then? And what if, for instance, the county does put out something that very clearly conflicts with something that the state is telling us? Having a hierarchy, or having language that says we will follow what the county tells us might harm a little bit of our flexibility when we could say, we are the ones that are ultimately evaluating which ones of these are we going to follow and which are we not. We don't necessarily need a policy to do that.
So my original concern when I reached out to ask Mark or Lori to ask Trevor to interpret this policy was because I wasn't sure if we would get ourselves in trouble for not, or potentially for not following whatever this was telling us to do. And I'm good. I would still like this particular policy cleaned up because I think it's awful and I would hope you would let Trevor do that. As for COVID, I don't know. Do you have any?
Well, the language that you add, right, there was some language that you kind of gave in July that you added coronavirus and then COVID-19 in the second paragraph. And then in the final paragraph, you just put district personnel shall consider any guidance from St. Croix County Public Health Department relating to the isolation of persons exhibiting symptoms of a communicable disease. Is that still stand?
It would. The only question would be if we just simply want to remove that last paragraph completely.
Just not add it out.
Because we could just have this say, the board shall follow all state statutes and health department regulations, which pertain to immunization and other means. We don't necessarily need that last paragraph that talks about isolating the students in the building and brings the county into it. So we have a couple of different options, but if we like that language and we want to keep it about, well, what's going to happen if someone's there, I did leave that flexibility saying that we will consider the guidance from the St. Croix County Public Health Department.
Ryan and Lisa, do you have anything that you want to add or any questions for Trevor?
No, I would agree. I think we could easily just state that, because when I look at our county health department, I think they personally mirror the state's recommendations, even the DPI's recommendations, pretty closely. I don't see ambiguity in that language.
So, do we as a policy committee understand what we want to present to the board for approval?
Trevor would have to do the language if Trevor understands.
I thought he already recommended the language.
Yeah.
So can we just insert that, or do we need to get a separate document from Trevor?
We don't.
No, I
We
think
don't.
if he still stands by that statement and just adding the coronavirus, COVID-19 and taking out that final paragraph.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna
Are you
add
good with that?
COVID-19 to the second paragraph list.
Yep.
And we're gonna take out the
The whole
last
last paragraph.
paragraph, and we're going to substitute the language that you just read, Patty Jo?
No, he said that if we just were to take that out and just keep it that Wisconsin Department of Health
Okay,
and not even mention the county.
Oh, no. I liked the part where they were saying take the recommendations of all of them into consideration.
Oh, okay, so yeah,
so you have that sentence?
yep, he has it right
Okay,
there.
so we can add that in place of the last paragraph?
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. We're taking all
Yeah.
those into consideration, but we're acting on the mandates.
Right.
You know, that's where, if we don't act on the mandates, that's where we're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah.
Correct.
Trevor, thank you.
I can forward that.
Okay. Trevor, is there anything else you want to add?
Nope, I think that should be good.
Okay, so what we just discussed, taking action on, sounds reasonable?
It does. I think that will help clarify this policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Lisa and Ryan too? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. We're done.
All right, so these policies will come back to our regular session for approval. Anybody have any other questions or comments about policies? Topics for action then. Catherine,
Yeah, I wanna, make a motion to, on the personnel update on 10A, to remove Shad Williams, special ed aide, from the personnel update. He was to replace Cody Watson. I'd like to take that out.
thank you. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Thank you.
The reason being because he, is not interested in, that position any longer.
So we have a motion to approve the personnel update with the elimination of one candidate who is no longer interested in the position. It's been seconded. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would anybody like to make another motion?
I move to approve topics 10, B, C, and D, unless somebody wanna take them individually.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the athletic activities personnel update, the extracurricular advisors, and the Market and Johnson invoices totaling $4,025,908.81 as presented. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Who was the second, sorry?
Once around the table,
I can start.
sure.
I had a former teacher send me a thing about 3D mask brackets that, I don't know if anyone's been seeing the videos.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
3D mask brackets that go,
3D mask
Yep.
brackets. Okay.
they're little things that actually clip into the inside of your mask. Sarah's not, have you seen them? Have you?
I've seen them on Facebook.
Right, I wonder if it works, so I don't know, I was wondering, I ordered a bunch for my children and myself, and I was hoping to get them for tonight, but obviously I didn't. But it's something to look at for teachers, at least. I guess I'll keep you guys posted on if they work or not. 'Cause if they aren't, might help for instruction and clarity. That's all I have.
Katie?
No, I'm good.
Roxanne?
Nothing for me.
Bruce?
I just want to remind, to have the approval of the agenda on the, minute, or on this agenda also.
Okay.
Bob? Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, paragraph 1, section F, for consideration of financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons. So moved. Patty Jo made a motion. Would anybody second?
Second. Meeting contagion.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries.